The Flatlock stitch is one of the most useful stitches your serger has, but most serger owners don't know about it. In this video, you'll learn how to make this stitch on a Brother 1034D, Juki MO655, and Baby Locky clips. But this process is similar no matter what kind of serger you may own. The Flatlock stitch makes a flat, non-overlapping seam with no exposed seam allowances. One side has a looped appearance typical of an overlocked seam, the other a ladder effect. The non-overlapping seam is less bulky. The Flatlock stitch is useful for sportswear, underwear, and intimate clothing, and for seaming thick, heavy fabrics such as fleece. It is also useful for decoration. As stitched by the serger, the Flatlock has loops on the top side created by the lower looper and V's on the bottom side created by the needle thread. To finish the stitch, you pull on both sides of the seam to unfold and set it. Depending on your serger, you can create either a 2-thread or 3-thread Flatlock stitch. Let's begin with the 3-thread Flatlock, which is available on most sergers. To make a 3-thread Flatlock, begin by removing one of the needles. Use the left needle for a wide Flatlock or the right needle for a narrow Flatlock. Thread the serger as you would for a 3-thread overlock stitch. Thread the upper looper first, then the lower looper, and finally the needle. If you need step-by-step instructions, links to videos for some popular models are in the description. Throughout this video, the needle is threaded in yellow, the upper looper in blue, and the lower looper in pink. Run some scrap fabric through the machine and check the overlock stitch. If the stitch looks good, you're ready to proceed to the Flatlock. To get from the overlock to the Flatlock stitch, you need to change 2 tension settings. For the Brother serger, lower the needle tension to 1 or even to 0, and raise the lower looper tension to about 7 or 8. For the Juki serger, lower the needle tension to between 1 and 2, and raise the lower looper tension between 7 and 9. On both sergers, leave the upper looper tension setting as is. If you have a different model, check your owner's guide for the proper settings. For example, if you have an auto-tensioning serger such as this Baby Lock Imagine, it likely has a stitch selector control to choose a Flatlock stitch. Disengage the cutter blades. Fold a piece of scrap fabric from your project and make a test stitch, running the folded edge against the cutter blades. Check your test stitch. The top stitches are formed by the upper looper and have the loops of a traditional overlock stitch. The bottom stitches are formed by the needle thread and they look like a line of V's. The upper looper thread almost disappears into the stitch. Depending on the fabric and the thread, you may need to change the tension slightly to balance the Flatlock stitch. The loops and the V's should meet each other at the folded edge of the fabric. If the loops are not distinct, as in this example, try slightly lowering the upper looper tension. If the stitch bunches up, as in this example, try lowering the looper tension. If the V's are not distinct, as in this example, try raising the lower looper tension or lowering the needle tension some more. To finish testing the Flatlock stitch, grab on both sides of the fabric and gently pull to set the stitch. Once you have found the ideal settings, write them down to use as a starting point for future projects. And if you find this tutorial helpful, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. The 2-thread Flatlock stitch is less bulky than the 3-thread Flatlock, but not every serger supports it. The Brother 1034D does not, for example, so check your owner's manual to see if the 2-thread Flatlock is available. To make the 2-thread Flatlock, your serger needs only 1 needle and the lower looper. Begin as you did with the 3-thread Flatlock by removing a needle. Then, disable the upper looper. Juki provides a small attachment that caps the upper looper and prevents it from interfering with the rest of the serger's operation, so that it will stitch only with the lower looper. The attachment fixes to the top of the shaft holding the looper arm. It has a small spring that fits into the threading hole of the upper looper. The Baby Lock sergers have a small lever on the upper looper arm. You can flip it to disable the upper looper. Then, fit the end of the lever into the small hole in the upper looper. After disabling the upper looper, thread the machine. You need only thread the lower looper and the needle. If you need detailed step-by-step instructions, I have links to videos for specific models in the description. Lower the needle thread tension to somewhere between 1 and 2, and set the lower looper tension to a midpoint somewhere between 4 and 6. For the Baby Lock Eclipse serger, set the needle thread tension to 1 or 0, and the lower looper tension to somewhere between 3.5 and 5. If you have a different model, check your owner's manual for the settings to use. Disengage the cutter blades. Fold a piece of scrap fabric from your project and make a test stitch, running the folded edge against the cutter blade. Check your test stitch. The top side should have a row of loops, and the underside should have a row of V's. The 2 rows should meet at the edge of the fabric. Depending on the fabric and the thread, you may need to fine-tune the tension adjustments to perfect the stitch. If the V's do not reach the edge, as in this example, loosen the needle tension or tighten the looper tension. If the loops do not reach the edge, as in this example, tighten the needle tension or loosen the looper tension. To finish testing the Flatlock stitch, grab on both sides of the fabric and gently pull to set the stitch. Once you have found the ideal settings, write them down to use as a starting point for future projects. Let's look at 2 different ways you can use the Flatlock stitch in your projects. You can use a Flatlock stitch to seam 2 pieces together along the freshly trimmed edge, just as you normally do with the overlock stitch. Or you can flatlock a single layer of fabric along a fold without cutting. To seam together 2 pieces of fabric with a Flatlock stitch, engage the cutter blade. Layer the 2 pieces of fabric and serge, just as you would for an overlock seam. Serge with right sides together to place the ladder stitch on the right side, or serge with wrong sides together to place the loops on the right side. After serging, grab on either side of the stitch and gently pull to set it, then press. If the seam does not lie flat after setting and pressing, loosen the needle and lower looper tension slightly. And for a 3-thread flatlock, raise the upper looper tension slightly. Keep in mind that the Flatlock stitch from a home serger is not as strong as an industrial Flatlock stitch. So if seam strength is a concern, use a 3-thread Flatlock and test first with a sample. To flatlock a single layer on the fold, disable the cutting blade so it cannot cut into the fabric. Fold the fabric. Serge, guiding the folded edge against the cutting blades. Leave a small amount of distance, about 1/8 of an inch or 2 millimeters, between the fold and the cutting blades, so the stitch will unfold completely flat. If you guide the fold too close to the blade, the finished seam will be lumpy, and if you guide too far away, the seam will be too loopy. Experiment a bit to find the best distance. The thicker the fabric, the wider the gap you should leave between fold and cutting blades. After serging, grab on either side of the stitch and gently pull to set it. Ladders will appear inside the fold, and loops will appear on the outside of the fold. Finally, press. To undo a 3-thread flatlock, find the lower looper thread in the chain. Gently pull it out of the stitch, distributing the gathering and bunching as you go. Once the lower looper thread is gone, The remaining 2 threads will unravel as individual strands. To undo a 2-thread flatlock is less straightforward. Run a seam ripper through the loop stitches, then pull the needle thread. You can use some sticky tape to clean up the small bits of thread. For more videos like this one, like and subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated.